This conference will now be recorded.
I'm gonna go to Marty's office so I don't make noise.
Cool. All right, so my name is Corby Dickerson. I'm the observing program leader here for the National Weather Service in Missoula, Montana. Last month we had a pretty remarkable Arctic event. It was obvious from the first couple days that it was going to be pretty interesting, climatologically speaking, as far as historic records go. But the deeper I dove, the more significant it obviously became. And so I put this together originally as just a 1 to 2 pager in thinking that it could be just a summary. And well, obviously, if you've seen the document, it's now, I've been updating it today. I forgot a couple of things, and now it's up to like 86 pages. So anyway, it's a lot of graphics, a lot of charts. My kind of book, easy to read. So here are some highlights. So far, and this is up to today, we've set 117 individual daily climate records were either broken or tied. And that's more than the ones I sent out in the email, and that's because I got some more data in, and I'm still waiting for a couple more stations to come in. We had 109 consecutive hours below zero in Kalispell and 106 in Missoula that were below zero. And I'll show you how pretty remarkable those values are later in the presentation. 65 mile per hour is the strongest wind gust that was observed at Glacier Park International Airport in Kalispell. That happened at kind of the peak of the Arctic cold frontal passage. The coldest temperature observed of all official observing locations was 47 below zero at Potomac, Montana on January 14th. Some more highlights. We had five stations that recorded 40 below zero or colder, including Potomac, up in the Yak, Butte, Phillipsburg, and also in Deer Lodge. And as you can see, Potomac and Deer Lodge both had 40 below or colder 2 mornings in a row. So pretty remarkable. And adding to that, and I'll show you why these are significant, we had 12 for 30 below or colder. That added Anaconda and Creston, Eureka, Hamilton, Hungry Horse, Kalispell, Lindbergh Lake, Sealy Lake, and West Glacier all added to the previous list of 40 below temperatures. So it's pretty remarkable to get that. And we also had consecutive mornings, or not even consecutive mornings, but one morning like in Butte on the 12th we had 38 below, and then on the 15th we had 33 below. So it was very interesting to see how the cold manifested itself, and it came in and then it actually got colder in some locations based on specific conditions, cloud cover, wind, etc. 12 new all-time daily records were set or tied. 9 daily observations placing in the top 2 coldest all-time, and 35 daily observations placing in the top 3 coldest all-time. So when we're talking about daily records, we're talking about either the coldest temperature observed on a specific day, the coldest low, the coldest high, and the coldest average daily temperature. And that's the sum of the high and low divided by 2. So here we'll get into the interesting ones. The all-time records set or tied. 2 locations, Libby Dam tied their all-time coldest temperature of 27 below. Their records go back to 1969. Phillipsburg, they broke their all-time coldest temperature. They reached 41 below, and the previous record was 38 below, and their records go back to 1955. The coldest high temperatures on record, new records were set at Libby Dam. 7 below is their new record. The old record was 6 below. SKQ Dam in Polson had a high temperature of 14 below zero. Their previous record was 12 below zero. And in Sealy Lake, their previous record is 5 below, and they tied that for a coldest high temperature on record. And then locations that had their coldest mean average 1-day temperature. So this is taking the high and the low, putting them added together, and then divided by 2. So you could basically say this was the coldest day on record. Hungry Horse Dam, 23 below is the new record. The old record was 22 below. And Libby Dam kind of obliterated a record that they set last year. Phillipsburg beat the record of 27 below by half a degree. SKQ Dam bested their record by 2.5 degrees. And same in Sealy Lake by half a degree, and also Thompson Falls by half a degree. Now, you'll notice, and I apologize, I didn't put them on the previous slides. I had intended to, the year of the old record. You'll notice the several years will be coming up time and time again in both the document and this presentation. And those are some pretty impressive cold spells that we had. 1989, 1990, 1963, 1968 are all periods of exceptionally cold weather that we broke or approached breaking records. So now how about some of the almost all-time records? These are the locations that had second coldest low temperatures on record. Creston had a low of 38 below zero, and their coldest on record was 41 below zero. And same in Thompson Falls, 22 below zero. This is second to 25 below zero in 1968. Both of those from that cold spell in 1968. The second coldest high temperatures on record, again, 1968, 1989. You'll notice on Sealy Lake, well, they had consecutive days where their high temperature was 15 below and 14 below. So their number one and number two coldest all-time high temperatures on record are both from this winter, 2024. And these are all these are values that account for the entire year. So you're going from January to December, and this accounts for an entire period of record. So in locations like Heron to Northwest, to get your second coldest high temperature on record with records that go back to 1912, and the same in Sealy Lake with records that go back to 1936, and Big Fork in 1938. I mean, we're talking about 100 years, 75 to 100 years worth of data. So it shows really how impressive this cold was. And then the mean average daily temperature, the second coldest on record in Deer Lodge and in Lindbergh Lake. And like I said, length of record, Deer Lodge, those go back to 1893. And again, you see 1989 comes up as the record for the coldest day in those two locations. So here are some other notable extremes to bring up in this. Butte has only recorded 45 degrees below zero or colder 11 times since records began in 1894. So their all-time record low is 52 below zero, set in 1983. This, on the 13th, they had a low of 45 below zero. And so this was only the 11th time in that record history that they've recorded 45 below zero. In Deer Lodge, they've only been 40 below 9 times since 1893. And you see that 2 of those happened in 2024, and 2 of those happened in 2022. So, it's been a while since we've had cold this cold, even in Deer Lodge. 1990 is what I've been referring to as kind of the last time we saw temperatures like this. And you can see that the 10th coldest all-time temperature in Deer Lodge was 39 below in 1990. Hamilton had a low temperature of 30 below, has only had a low temperature of 30 below 16 times since their records began in 1895. Their all-time record low is 39 below in 1899. And you can see on this graph, they haven't been as cold as they were this winter since, well, gosh, looks like the 70s probably, or 1989, that cold snap that happened then. In Kalispell, we got down to 33 below zero. And this is only the 16th time on record that they have been 30 below or colder. And these records go back to 1899. In Phillipsburg, this was actually the first time a low of 40 below or colder was recorded since 1955. And I had that caveat, it's 1955. It's possible that they could have been colder. There is some other data from around the Phillipsburg area that we could consult, but it is distant, a bit more distant from the ranger station. So at this location where it's been since 1955, this is the first time they've recorded a low of 40 below or colder. They actually got 41 below on the 13th. And in Potomac, where we oftentimes see 40 below as our coldest location that we report on, this is only the 10th time they've had 45 below or colder. Last winter, they did it in December, right before Christmas, where they got down to 48, 49 below. The all-time record in Potomac is 50 below in that cold snap of 1983. In the West Glacier, and I put / Belton region because in 1947-48, the name of West Glacier became, and prior to that, it was actually Belton. We have the Belton data, and I've gone through all this stuff that's easy to read, and now I'm painstakingly working through the hard to read data. But what I have ascertained is they've achieved 40 below at West Glacier since 1920 two times. This winter, they got 39 below, almost got their third 40 below temperature. The only two times it's on the record that I have that show 40 below or colder were in 1924 and 1933. So I mentioned earlier consecutive hours at or below zero. Now, obviously, a lot of these locations that are daily reporting stations, they spent multiple hours, days below zero. But at our observing sites where we get higher resolution data and automated data, like at our airports, we have data that goes back to about 1948-ish that is hourly or sub-hourly observations. And so looking through those archives and looking through the records, we had 109 hours observed in Kalispell where the temperature was below zero. This places fourth on the all-time records, looking back over the archives, with the first number 141 hours below zero that happened in 1950, and then you'll see the 1983 and 1990 cold snaps, and then in fifth place is the 1989 cold snap. Now, it's interesting to note that the data from the 50s is a bit higher resolution than the automated data we have right now, in the sense that a person was observing it, obviously, and the amount of data that they would put into each observation and the frequency they would send out observations was a little bit differently than even in the 60s and 70s. So it might be a reason why some of the 50s data comes up, especially for wind. However, it really doesn't make a big difference for temperature because we're looking at hourly observations here. Looking at that same data for Missoula, we had 106 hours, and that's consecutive hours at or below zero. I was actually working on the 16th when the temperature crested the zero mark and we hit 1 degree. It definitely didn't feel that much different, but after 106 consecutive hours, I think the psychological aspect of getting a little bit warmer was there. Though I will admit I was hoping for maybe 2 more hours so that we could, or 3 more hours so we could pass number 5, that 1972 winter. But you see 127 consecutive hours in 1983, and then we had 1978, 1990 are on here as also in the top 5. And then we also had a pretty remarkable wind gust in Kalispell. It actually ends up being the 6th strongest Arctic wind gust on record. And this is where the data gets a little bit more interesting as far as the 50s and 60s versus 70s to today, based on how the observer was observing the wind speeds. But what I can say is I've seen several different documentation that proves the highest values of wind gusts in Kalispell and validates that data. But this is the strongest wind gust we've had in Kalispell since 1982 during the winter months. Now, we've had stronger gusts during the summer months associated with convection, and also in the fall, I think we had a gust over 67, I think, and that was associated with a cold front and some downslope winds. So when I looked at the data, I only went from basically the main winter period, and I looked for wind direction coming out of the east to the northeast or the north. And I omitted data from the west because with an Arctic cold frontal passage, it's either going to come from the north or the northeast. And so that's how I came up with the table of data to show these max wind speeds here. So 65 miles per hour, it's the strongest gust we've had associated with an Arctic cold front since 1982 and again 1990, honestly, because 1990 during that cold snap we had a gust to 62 miles per hour. So I wanted to give a quick plug here since I was recording this and going to send it out and post it. We also could use new observers. I invited some of my observers to join the conversation here, but we're also looking for new weather observers in these locations. So anyone listening who might know someone in these locations, this is the data that we are using to produce reports like this, to understand our climate, to understand the historic perspective of weather systems and storms. And so I'm always looking for new observers to fill in holes in the network, to add new observers in locations. But these locations that I've listed here, these 8, are kind of a high priority for us. They either have a long climate history or they're in strategic locations where they would give us valuable insights as to cold snaps like this, snowstorms, and just daily data that we can add into the model ingest, add into the public domain. So with that, I'll go ahead and end the recording and take any questions that we have. Like I said, it was going to be pretty short and just a summary. For more details, you can obviously refer to the full document. So give me one sec. I'll and